Good afternoon. My name is Tom Suter. I'm the founder of the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center, and welcome 2021, and welcome to our first Thursday after lunch IT webinar series. So really excited to kick off the year with this topic, and you can't have planned it any better. Sometimes you're better lucky than good, but today we're going to talk about preventing data breaches from the edge to the cloud. And with COVID-19 and our gradual migration to the cloud, it's very, very timely. One thing before we get into it, many of you know, if not all of you, on December 13th, SolarWinds announced that it experienced a highly sophisticated manual supply chain attack. And this is a crime scene in the federal government. We're working on this. Our federal government colleagues all know about it. They're all talking about it. They're all collaborating, but right now we can't talk about it. And I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but this topic is very pertinent right now, as you can imagine. But anyway, welcome all attendees. Special thanks to Linda Garcia, who I've worked with a long time, Edward Evans, Sydney Morgan, and the rest of the Cisco team. We really appreciate you being a great partner for ATARC, and you're always bringing your really, really good ideas to us. So what we're going to do is we're going to hear from our panelists after a quick introduction. We'll go into a deep dive with our panelists, and we'll have some Q&A, and we'll take some questions from everybody. I might have a few, but I really want to hear from everybody else. So real quickly, we'll do some quick introductions. We have, and it's like Hollywood Squares. I'm not sure where everybody is, but I'm going to start off with my good friend Jacob Marcellus, this is a new title, Chief Compartmented Enterprise Services Office over at Defense Information Systems Agency. How are you doing today, Jake?
I'm doing great, Tom. Thanks for having me here.
No problem. And you're working from home. I see. You don't have to go to the office. Every time I was always at Fort Meade, that's where I don't think I've ever seen you outside of the office. So good to see you.
Yeah, great. Different times right now.
Yep, that's right. And next we have Stephen Hernandez, who's Chief Information Security Officer over at United States Department of Education. I thought you were at Energy. Did I get that wrong?
No, you got it right. That's
okay.
A great catch. We're Ed, and Energy is DOE. So that's how we keep it separate.
Yeah, I had something written wrong. So good to see you. You got to let me know about the background, because we have an inside baseball thing going on right now with our prep call yesterday. Tell us about your background real quick.
Yeah, so when my wife and I travel, or at least when we did before the wonderful pandemic, one of our things is always going to different libraries. And this one is the library of El Escorial Monastery, and it's out in Madrid, Spain. So it's a beautiful place, exactly what you expect, quiet solitude, good place for reflection. But I think I recognize yours as well, probably somewhere in Ireland.
Yes. I was, so if you ever go to Dublin, Ireland, there's three things there I really like. They had the world's oldest bar. They've got a great brewery, and I do share a passion with you for libraries. So this is Trinity College in Dublin. This is actually a picture I took. It's like out of Harry Potter. It's very difficult to describe, but it's books up to the ceiling, and I don't know, it's probably 800 years old or something. So I'm in honor of you. I'm going to keep this background today. Next, we have Roy Fernando, who's Cyber SecOps Information Security Division at the U.S. Small Business Administration. How are you doing today, Roy?
Hey, guys. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, and pleasure to be sharing the panel with you guys again.
Yeah, and we'll get into it, but you guys, once again, are getting rolled out for a huge program that's going to be unrolled in the next couple of weeks. So we'll get into that certainly in our discussion. And then last but certainly not least, we have Sydney Morgan, who's a distinguished engineer at Cisco. And Sydney, I know that's really a hard honor to get inside of your company. That's like a big deal.
Yeah, I think so. It takes a lot of work and a lot of dedication.
Yep. And where are you out of today?
So I'm out of my house today in San Francisco. So living the dream in San Francisco.
There you go. At least we didn't get you with the 9 a.m. webinar. We sometimes do that to our West Coast friends. So
I'm
it's
used
kind
to
of like
supporting the
football.
East Coast.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, thank you for coming today. So we'll get right into it. Maybe we'll start off with you, Jake. Let us know a little bit about your job in the first place. I'd like to hear about this new gig that you have over at DISA, and you've had a lot of interesting ones so far, and how that relates to the topic today.
So sure. So it's actually been a couple of years since we've spoken, and since I've been able to participate here in the ATARC. And if you look behind me, you can see my ATARC award back there. It's right. I didn't put it there for the webinar. It's been there since we moved into the house.
It was a mobile award. I just saw that picture. I was thinking how much weight that I had then, and then I lost it. Now I'm back up to that weight. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, I got it with my compadre that I used to work up with, CIO. But since 2019, I'll just start in 2019. I think one of the most significant things that happened was I was accepted into the Fed CIO CISO Council's SES CDP, and that was a great experience. Right, for a year, I got to spend some time with 22 other CIO and CISO types down at American University in the Key program. And it was good, right? It was definitely something where I got to share and hear some different perspectives since we generally stay in our DoD little bubble, right? So great things there. A part of that program, I also was able to serve as the Deputy Chief Data Officer. It was a part of a broadening assignment that was mandatory in the program. And that was definitely something different than what I've actually experienced in the past, right? So a lot of my context for data has been as a computer scientist, right? Like using the data for defensive, analyzing the data, maybe analyzing it for net ops, right? Trying to understand if you see some indicators, right? Like for system up or down, but this one really looked at data from a perspective of, are you meeting your organizational objectives? And can you use data to continuously improve on your mission objectives, right? And adjust. So that was actually great. Right now, and I graduated the program and some good stuff there, right? But right now, I actually lead enterprise special access program IT. And it's a great position, right? I'm able to leverage past experiences in enterprise development, common services IT, and a lot of that cyber ops and net ops maturation. So, and with that, I think, but the most significant thing has been, what we're dealing with now, right? COVID-19, and it really has pushed what it means to be an adaptive leader, right? So conditions that were static are very fluid. As you know, I was sitting in my car yesterday, parked, of course, safe, right? Talking to you on a VTC screen in between my my steering wheel. Because a situation dictated that I needed to be in a different place very quickly, right? And it's most interesting that, at least looking at my team, the people who perform are continuing to perform in this, right? So just being adaptive, whether that's alternative work fixes like we all have here, homemade haircuts, and then last, and very interesting, becoming a network engineer in my own house, right, inside plant, because I have generally 5 people at some points of the day doing strictly two-way audio and video. Again, thanks for having me, and I look forward to the discussion.
Yep. Thank you, Jake, for coming here. Next, we'll go with, how about you, Roy? I know you got a lot. You guys have handled a lot of data coming in from all over the place and ramping up. And kudos to you and your team for getting out. I don't know what it was, $600-700 billion worth of PPP loans, among other things. And now it looks like you're headed to round 2.
Yes. So far we are situated in a good platform we already built. And we are expanding what's up through our thought process and having proper planning to attack this type of situation. So I currently work with the EU deployment and the Zero Trust program, and also tech and the modernization of vulnerability management, which open up a huge can of worms because of the recent exploit happened in SolarWinds, and we have to look into other avenues how we can tighten our screws on our vulnerability and patch management process. Apart from that, you know, since COVID-19, our network volume went up. People are trying to gain access to our systems more than ever, and they're also targeting end users who's using tools at home to exploit some sort of data. So in order to mitigate all of the risks, we had a lot of controls in place. And what we did was we revisited all of those scenarios and see how can we make these things better to facilitate all of our customers, which is the entire United States. If the stronger we are, then we can support better to all of our customer base, including other federal agencies. And one of those main things we always paddle into our security guys: do your work right. Follow through the processes. We have the processes in place for a reason. Just follow through. Don't take any shortcuts. Those initial frameworks we put in together, it's working really well. And also we are adding more layers with all of these new mandates coming through the pipeline. Fun times to be in cybersecurity.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your service. Next, we'll go with Stephen Hernandez, Department of Education. And I know you guys had to deal with that citizen aspect. Of course, it's all about me. You know, I've got two kids. Actually, my one son just graduated here in December, but filling out FAFSA forms and a lot of the citizen work that you do. I'm interested to hear your story.
Yeah, so most people know us for one of our primary missions, which is educational access and opportunity. So no matter where you may find yourself in life, career-wise, mental health, physical situation, we're going to make sure that you have those opportunities to get that education. But one of those opportunity areas, of course, is also federal student aid, and that's our 800-pound angel in the room, as it were, and that is our $1.6 trillion accounts receivable. And on any given year, we're brokering that accounts receivable, but depending on Congress's persuasion and where they're headed, we might be brokering between an additional 1 to 2 more trillion, depending on the programs that we're running. And we just released another 100 billion out into the marketplace to help support K through 12 and institutions of higher education during these COVID times. And what we're finding is that whether it's the 6,000 institutions that we interact with at the higher education space, that's where we facilitate federal student aid, they all have the same challenges we do. They're all figuring out how do we adapt and how do we frankly evolve, and that's the key term. How do we keep evolving to stay one step ahead of our adversary? An interesting tidbit was when COVID first started, we saw our attackers, they had a little slowdown as well. They had a little dip, and we actually thought, well, that's interesting. That's wonderful. They're holding off. But then they came back with a vengeance. They retooled, and they recognized now it's not just the systems that we use as an enterprise, both our partners and the department. It's also now the home systems, and it's the software and the shadow IT that they bring to the table at the end of the day to get the mission done, but sometimes not in the most secure ways. And so that's been an ongoing dialogue between the department and our citizens-facing services and our partners, is about how do we keep that evolution headed in the right direction at the right pace. And a lot of that is about communication and timing. And so that's been a very critical aspect as we've been moving forward.
Thank you, Stephen. And last but certainly not least, we have Sydney Morgan. It would be great to get your perspectives. At Cisco, you see a lot. You see a lot across government. You see a lot across industries. I'd love to hear your perspectives.
Yeah, so I think we had the same challenges as most enterprises and government agencies. I remember that fateful night. It was a Friday. It was fairly late on Friday in Chuck, our CEO, called us in and said, it's about mid-March, said, hey, I think I need to send everybody home and to work. We'd had a big outbreak in one of our engineering buildings, and like, okay, but do you think you can get everybody up and running quickly? I'm like, sure, no problem. One of the key things about this is that we had adopted a DevSecOps model, development security operations, so that we had security built into every platform that we had deployed, and everything was fully automated. So automation is critical. So that's good. But so automation was security. Security is a day zero thought in all of my architecture. So we went home. We had a single point of capability to deploy securely home office capabilities. And I went from, in over a weekend, from about 485 office locations to 140,000 office locations globally. And those all had to be up, running, and secure and connected, as quickly as possible. I got the entire United States up and running by Monday, again, thanks to automation and capabilities that we had in place and security being part of the architecture. Then we got the rest of the world up and connected within about 8 days. So we had 140,000 offices that we now support, and we have them up and running in 8 days in a very secure, zero trust operating model. And we're seeing the same thing. User experience is good, and productivity is up about 26%. Might have to do with there's no place to go, but we are seeing tremendous productivity from our employees.
How do you measure, and I'll get into it with everybody else, but while I have you, how do you measure productivity? I'm kind of interested in that, and that's pretty impressive to get 26% more productivity and during a pandemic. I love it.
Yeah, so there's two ways you can measure productivity with my systems. One, you can do a very objective assessment, because the way we secure Cisco is through analytics. The way I look at user experience is through analytics. I have an AI ops platform that I can event and correlate across, both vertical from the business value through the business applications all the way down through the infrastructure, and then horizontally across all my systems. Then the other is the objective of pulling our employees and just asking, how's the user experience? One is, I think, a little draconian, and we don't like to do, and we don't use it. We use the other objective one. Are employees happy? Are they feeling productive? And with those surveys and some internal polling that we have, and I can verify it with all the objective analytics, we came up with that number. As a matter of fact, our productivity from just the pure hours worked went to a point where we started giving employees days off just to say, hey, take a break, relax, because when you're at home, when there's nothing to do, you go and read email, and it's 11 o'clock at night, and you realize that you've been on your computer for over 18 hours that day. So we're experiencing more burnout from computer time than we are the other way around.
Very interesting, Sydney. And Jake, I remember that Friday that Sydney's referring to is like the last day I was actually at the government office, and I was at the Jake Joint AI Center. Of course, they're on your network, the DISN network. How has it been over there as far as changing? Because a lot of your work's in a skiff. It's like, every time I go there, I gotta calibrate. I gotta bring some paper in because I can't remember. I don't have my notes on me. I don't have my iPad, and I get turned around, and I don't have anybody's number. So I know it's a big change. Just change for you all, and just maybe go into that a little bit. I know you've adapted to the new deal.
Yeah, so I say it's like two different stories, right? So one, I will say good is, for a lot of what we do, let's just say unclassified, right? We've had like pretty robust VPN and mobility solutions. And I think we had also really good web conferencing capabilities and the expectation there. So I think there was just a lot of capacity, maybe like growth that needed to be done in that area. So we've done very well there. Now, on the other side, right, the things that are not extensible to be done at home, those are challenges. They are definitely challenges. It's not just even a matter of not being able to come to the office, but you also have the expectations of physical distancing and those things when you are in the office, right? So they in some cases may, deprecate your ability to be able to fit, DevSecOps, right? In a way. But as Sydney said, there's this innate feeling of people to still want to get things done, and in some cases, leaders have to say, "Hey, I do need you to take a break, right?" Or
Yeah.
I do need you not to inadvertently break the separation of groups that we're trying to do in order to actually keep the physical distancing, right? As a COVID mitigation. So I would say, we're probably at a net loss, in respect to capability, but definitely proud to see that a lot of people are kind of leaning in to getting things done.
Great, great. And next up, how about you, Stephen? How was that transition for you all over at education?
Yeah, it's been really incredible. And what's fascinating is we actually had a great COOP plan, a great continuity of government plan, and we executed them. And it's the little things that you find, well, nobody ever thought of that. And the big one for us was we had to close our badging offices for a period of several weeks. And of course, we used the badges to get into the building. Well, that wasn't so much of an issue because no one was coming into the building. But we also used the badge to get into our computers, our laptops, our endpoints, and that was a big deal. And we were sitting on a Wednesday afternoon on the cusp of one of our largest onboardings for the year. And come Monday, it was either going to be, well, you need to come in and get a badge. Sorry, that's really horrible. Or we're not going to issue you equipment, which obviously was not acceptable. And so looking into a lot of these agile practices and really driving towards, if we Kanban and put everything to the left except for this project, and we got all the right people in the room, and we removed obstacles down the way, how quickly could we get a solution in place? And over 5 days, we engineered a completely new multi-factor authentication solution.
Wow.
Tested it, had it ready to go Monday morning with technology we already had. But it was getting the right people there. We needed the enterprise architect who knew all these services and solutions. We needed the engineering folks, the security folks, the sysadmins, the service desk. They had to ship their model or change their model to ship and receive via FedEx versus in person. A tremendous amount of work over 5 days, and big kudos to the team because Monday folks onboarded and we didn't miss a beat. And we're taking that use case internally and saying, how can we do that more often? And how can we start leveraging some of these agile ways of thinking so that we can really focus and drive hard on the critical challenges and then work through the next one instead of being spread way too thin across too many projects?
And do you think that this is going to stick? I just think of Captain Kirk going to Scotty. Scotty, we need warp speed in 2 minutes. Well, Scotty would say, "Hey, it's going to give me a week. We'll get warp speed back up." And Kirk would say, "We need it in 4 minutes, or we're dead." How are we going to keep that pace? Maybe not at that breathtaking speed, but are we? Do you think we've cracked it now, and we're going to do things a little more agile and do things a little quicker based on COVID?
Yeah, we definitely see that in our ranks. This one was certainly the emergency. I need warp speed now before the Klingons are on us. But the other situations are we have lots of other opportunities where we discovered we were just doing 1,000 things a little bit at a time all at once, and it was not moving us forward. And if we could cut that down to 10, cut that down to 100, and really drive hard on those, they get completed, and they get completed sooner. And then we get the next 100, et cetera. So it's been a culture shift of getting people to think about how we deploy our services and how we deploy our operations. But we've seen the victories leading to more and more people gaining that mindset and saying, I want to do business that way.
Great. And how about you, Roy? I know that you were working on going to the cloud, and when Maria was there, and you guys had made a lot of changes, but let us know from your perspective how that all went.
So thank you for reminding our cloud adoption process. So when we had this transition for COVID, we had the same situation about credentialing people in onboarding. So since we adapted Azure and Microsoft, now we're going to Google as well. And it was an easy process. What we did was we went out of the traditional credentialing process, and we went on different attributes, how to validate our users. And we, Hernandez said, we went outside of our physical security process, bring on two-factor authentication, and put some new technologies in place to onboard people faster, and we shipped out their laptops, everything ready to go. To answer your question, is this going to stay? Yes. So we have other means and ways to validate each single user onboarding into the prem or wherever they need to onboard, wherever their location is. So this is going to stay, and this is a whole different process. Some agencies previously I worked, they take like 6 months to onboard. Now we are onboarding within 48 hours, individuals. So this is a really good process. This process has been there within every agency. It's the mindset of the leadership saying, okay, we can do this, even though it's not written in any of the documents, but buying in from the top to accelerate these processes is the biggest win for everybody who's in the field.
Yes, we have an identity management group, and boy, there are so many lessons to be learned. I know one of Stephen, I don't know if you were there when Alan Hill was there, but he's heading up a pilot, and Alan Hill is a GSA, and he heads the EIS program now, and he knows that stuff really well. But he's like working on a pilot in identity management with the Postal Service to do some credentialing, maybe through our post offices. And the post offices eternally wanted to do more and more work. But I think identity would be a great place, because it's really hard to get in the government building and go get your credentials. We need to think of a better way to do it. And we want to try to bring different agencies together. Everybody has the same problem. DoD has it with CAC. Civilian agencies with PIV, it's definitely something that is a problem. So we're starting to get some questions. I actually figured out how to do it. We have one. As attacks on the edge ramp up, do you see programs targeting cyber recovery increasing? We see a lot of programs around security and prevention, but not many around data resiliency and recovery. Any comments would be appreciated. So this is in the recovery part. Maybe we can start. Stephen, you want to handle that one? Try to handle that one, or?
Yeah, I'll throw something on the table and we can go from there. Absolutely. So as alluded to earlier, COOP and COG became vital parts of this, and that went into our contingency planning and also discussions around resiliency. We were fortunate in that we had just had an entire infrastructure transformation about maybe a year or so before this all happened. And one of the use cases we focused on was frankly a pandemic. And this one played out a little different than what we thought it would, but part of it was assuming that folks were just out and the whole East Coast was not operational. Where do we have resilience in infrastructure and services and operations throughout the rest of the United States? And that really served us well, because in many cases we made sure that we had the right capacity at the ready at our multiple locations for MTIPs and TIC and things like that, but then also making sure that our service providers were in a position where if they needed to route traffic outside of the TIC, that we had ways they could do that. We were looking at some of the new TIC use cases that we could put in place and fire up in the cloud to make that happen.
Thank you. And Sydney, how about Cisco? You guys have been in this game for a while. What is your approach?
Yeah, resiliency has been built into our architecture from the beginning. So we basically had a data strategy, and we have resiliency built into it. So I have active data centers. We took advantage, as mentioned earlier, automation and self-service capabilities to be able to distribute our data across the globe. Going to a cloud-native application architecture, cloud-native environment using containers and Dockers to orchestrate that. So multiple data centers around the world, 19 of them, 13 carrier-neutral facilities and interconnections to service providers that we can also use for resiliency. 3 big ones out there: Azure, GCP, and AWS. And we also have 300 other partners that connect in through our carrier-neutral facilities. So it probably goes under the better be lucky than good. That resiliency, global resiliency, has been something we've been planning for since I've been at Cisco for 20 years.
And Jake, how about you all? You basically have your internal stakeholders, but you also have customers. You have the Army, the Navy, et cetera, et cetera. How do you guys handle resiliency, basically?
Yeah, so I think it's like the other two panelists talked about. So 10 years ago, I remember working in my first organization, and one of the enterprise architecture standards that had always been was this thing called high availability, right? Which really meant multi-site architecture, in some case active, in some cases maybe hot, warm. So we're continuing that, and I'll say kind of a lead into the cloud, right? What does that actually mean in the cloud? So it may not look to be where you actually architect to applicate your application in that type, but can you leverage built-in capabilities of having two availability zones, right? And I think what's also key is pretty much robust data backup.
Yeah.
There's just certain things that you're just not going to be able to prevent against, right? We saw an event with the telecom on Christmas morning, and the systems will go down, but in some cases for that recovery, right, where's the data? So can you go ahead and reconstitute? And do you have those plans? Do you exercise those plans?
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And I think, Roy, we haven't heard from you on this topic. I know you guys have worked up quite a bit on this. Go ahead.
Yes, we did. Because we are like cloud everywhere. So it was easy for us to, we are using infrastructure as code now. So we built in all of our recovery and BCP and DCP plans in place. And like other gentlemen said, this was the best test case for everybody to test out how their application is going to work, because the network traffic, some of our applications double, triple, and 10 times more than a regular day. So because we built all of this with rigorous testing and using existing cloud technologies within each cloud provider, it helped us a lot. And bouncing off of different data centers, different zones, everything we did through their cloud profiling. And also because using infrastructure as code and building DevSecOps to each application, it helps us a lot, because it's moving just the code instead of moving the servers. It's the serverless architecture we are following right now. You're going to get back to me about the new application deployment. We will talk about that during that time.
Yep. And thank you for that. And so with us going remote, and we're starting to use lots of different new applications and some surge requirements, as we alluded to at some of your agencies, how do you scale? And I know there's also some challenges of like, how do I, my cost and these kinds of things are changing. So what are some of the trends inside that we're seeing as we move more to a remote workforce? And let me go ahead and start with you, Sydney.
Yes, so obviously the costs are increasing as far as the connectivity goes. I mean, our WebEx traffic is up 24 times its normal peak volume, and if you just look at the average over the past 9 months, it's up 3 times. So those are definitely added costs.
It's crazy. Yeah.
The big win for us is that we haven't had any travel, so financially those have somewhat offset each other. So it's been a big win there. We've got the productivity that I mentioned a little bit earlier, and our platforms were in place. So we've always had a kind of anywhere, anytime work mentality at Cisco, and it has to be secure. And we want security to be fun, because humans are your weakest link in any security architecture. So we have a dojo class. Depending on your roles within the company, you have to have anywhere from a white belt security certification up to a black belt. And then you have to understand data and how the data is classified. And then we test you through phishing and a few other things that we do. But we really ingrain in our employees that security is everybody's responsibility. It's InfoSec's responsibility. So it's allowed us to kind of balance the cost, keep Cisco safe, and then drive productivity for through this whole pandemic until we get back into the office.
Great. And Jake, what are some of the numbers that have shifted around as we've gone remote? I know, I know that you guys have had some big challenges there and opportunities, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, so I probably can't get a quantified answer, but I will tell you as I walk the building, it's a lot different place than it used to be, right? You see more of the cleaning teams than you actually see the workers, right, that are actually in there. But kind of to key off one of your question that you asked Sydney. I think right now we've been primed to be successful in this with just kind of my old world, right? Mobility. How many devices am I just even looking at right now that are enabled to even support this WebEx, right? If you look at consumer network speeds, right? So 1 gigabit in my house. I would have never thought that would even be something I would have, and it's pretty affordable, right? So
yeah.
it's not crazy. And then back to the cloud, right? So although this is somewhat connected, I will say just even native cloud usage, even when we lift and shift applications, right? So not native cloud, it's just amazing that with a couple of keystrokes, we're able to quickly scale up when it comes to memory or when it comes to storage or even even processor control. So, if you contrast something like that to actually buying a blade or anything, right? So, we're talking about minutes versus weeks. So I think if we were in this situation even just 10 years ago,
yeah,
it would be different. It would be drastically different in the amount of productivity we would be able to get to.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I forgot to mention that you mentioned that your mobile, you guys have really good mobile solutions. You're actually responsible for that. That's why you won that award back there. So that was thank you. That was that's great when you do these kinds of things and then you see how valuable it turns out.
Absolutely.
Roy, you want to add something to this, please?
Yeah, when it comes to cost, like all of the panelists said, most of the cost will be offsetting because our overhead cost went down because no traveling, no commuting and people are not moving around. So, and also we leverage all of the cloud providers. We leverage pay-as-go model. So however we are consuming, that's the amount we are paying. So it's kind of balanced out. We looked at our, in my previous engagement with HHS, we looked at our price points and how much increase. It was not that much of increase even after this humongous amount of teleworkers or the remote workers. So it's all depend, and also we have good partnership with all of these cloud vendors. They understand we're not going to be able to get their money right away because it needs to go through Congress and all of those processes. We have really good established relationship with these guys. They understand, they are adaptable, and they are flexible to support our mission.
Yeah, that it's good that you can partner with these vendors and they're understand the situation. Stephen?
Yeah, for us, it's been very similar. Our agencies have very much looked at it in the whole of the organization, and where we're saving funds, we're consolidating in facilities, we're saving on parking, we're not traveling. What we're seeing is our leadership said, well, let's make sure we're plowing that right back into technology so that our users have a good fidelity experience. And that's been vitally important. And it's the little things. It's like, is there jitter and jerkiness in the video and the teleconferencing? And can we troubleshoot down to say, actually, no, you need to move on from DSL to something a little faster probably in your home, these type of conversations. But without the right tooling and the training with the people, it's really hard to do that. And ultimately what we're finding is that user experience is so crucial in making this working situation pan out. When folks have a great user experience, the technology is firing on all cylinders, the easiest way, the fastest way is also the most secure way. That's when we start winning. And what we're finding is our organization's been very willing to put forth the resources that they're saving towards things that have those kind of outcomes.
Thank you. And now we're going to move into a topic close to Roy's heart, but How about on the DevSecOps issues? I know that a lot of the federal government and their contractors, they were kind of relying on, hey, everybody has to be in the office and we have to collaborate and we have to be physically next to each other. How did this transform? How did this work with your agency?
So, like I previously said, it's all started with our leadership. We went in front of them and explained to them there are other ways to get these things done without people in keyboard and in the platform. So we show them a prototype of how a infrastructure as code and DevSecOps, the whole process work, and fully automated. So once they realize, okay, this is a good thing, and all of a sudden COVID came in, we had the best test case, and we rolled into our production environment. Most of our applications are utilizing that AWS structure we built in. We are also planning to move to other cloud spaces. It was a really good win, and the leadership understand how crucial these rapid deployments, because when Congress said, I want this application within 3 days, we are delivering them because they trust us to give this back to the small business vendors so they can be afloat in their economy. So this is something, we take pride in SBA, how we provide these services to all of our customers. And the team we have some rock stars in our teams. They are, all you need to give is requirements, they'll take care of it. And we provide them the right frame, how we would like to do security is baked into every single step throughout the entire lifecycle process. So we don't need to wait until the last minute to get it validated. So it goes through the whole step 1 to step 10. By the time it goes to sign off the product, it's already there. Data is there, the validation is done. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Great. And Sydney, you alluded to a little bit with AI ops, and maybe you can go into a little more detail on, how your DevSecOps team, how you guys are doing DevSecOps at Cisco.
Yeah, we've been a fairly distributed IT organization from the beginning. Although when we first started to form a DevOps team, we wanted to get at least together for the first initial meeting because it just seemed to be a little bit more productive. Obviously, that couldn't happen now with COVID. But we built platforms, based on WebEx Teams, the WebEx portfolio that allowed us to do DevOps in a collaborative fashion virtually. Now, those initial virtual capabilities were people going to the office in San Jose and the East Coast and maybe Bangalore if we get the time zones. But then when we moved everybody home, since everything had been digitized, it was really easy to collaborate in a DevSecOps Scrum, because we had all of our models and process in place from home as it was in the office. So it was kind of a natural just extension of what we were already doing. It just individually as opposed to small little groups.
Right. And Jake, I know you guys, you all have challenges. Just everybody's co-located for the most part, from my understanding. How did you all adapt in your development?
Yeah. So I think it was interesting in that since, in the past you were used to kind of all jumping in this one big conference room. And in some cases, the capacity of that conference room may have inhibited some groups from actually, participating, right, in a scrum. And now that's not a limitation, right? If you're actually using, web conferencing, right? And I'll say, a part of my training and some of the things I've been reading about, I've been trying to extend strategic agile framework to actually bring in some other groups inside of our agile processes, because we started to see where we kind of had this core, NetOps and application and service support, but there might have been people who work physical security or other parts of our processes that were just not in, and then we bolted on at the end, right? So in some ways, COVID has made it where it's actually easier to extend groups into these processes, because we're not, we got the large conference room, we got the medium conference room, and if you land the medium conference room, you're not as effective as you landed the large conference room.
Yeah, it's very, very, very interesting. And Stephen Hernandez, I want to add a little.
Yeah, I love this conversation around AI and machine learning. I want to pick on that a little bit as well. For us, when we're looking at these type of capabilities, we're looking at it through the lens of zero trust. And for us, zero trust is kind of the next big strategic move. The next 10 years for us is going to be defined by how we leverage the concepts in zero trust. And we have this idea of the trust engine, this thing that's going to be making decisions in near real time about how to protect our enterprise. And for us, that's going to be driven by machine learning, AML, frankly, for the most part, artificial intelligence in terms of some of the decision making, and then RPA in terms of making sure that all the follow-on actions and all the paperwork, the audit trails that need to happen are going to be in place. And so, sometimes I get asked, well, what are the big things on the horizon? It's like, well, you need to understand data and statistics, and you need to understand AI and ML and RPA, because those things combined are going to be the workhorses of cybersecurity going into the future. And we have to get there because our adversaries are already starting down this path.
Yeah, we got a question, and I'm going to try to frame it so it's sort of understandable. Do your cloud vendors provide security of your data? And taking into consideration recent news events, we do not hear a lot about enterprise key management on-prem as it relates to migration in the cloud. How about this? Maybe describe how you do security and whose responsibility is what. And Roy, maybe we'll start off with you at SBA, because I heard the story that you guys had 30-something tools and you've reduced it to 6, and you're getting better results.
Yes, thank you. It's more than 30. So what we did was we had overlapping tools everywhere, and we did gap analysis and see which tool does what. Then we collapsed everything, and we finally came cloud-enabled native cloud tools on all 3 clouds. It do the same thing. So once we realized that, we enabled them and got the logs into a nominal size. So because everything is available with those 6 different tools, and we able to get actionable intel off of the tools. To answer the question about the certificates and the how we are managing it from the on-prem to cloud, so all of the cloud providers have their own key management system. And also, if you have a key management system and you can bind with your Active Directory and manage the whole thing as holistically, regardless of who is signing your keys. So that's the way we are handling in SBA on the key management piece.
Great. And how about Cisco, Sydney? If you can add a little depth to that.
The same as above. We're managing it through. So Active Directories are single source of truth. We're managing it via single sign-on user ID, leveraging a lot of our platforms. Because if you look at what it takes to get into the crown jewels, you go through about 20 concentric security platforms to get into some of the most sensitive data. All that stuff collects and gives off digital exhaust. We absorb all that and then analyze it consistently with commercial products and some homegrown InfoSec products. Analyze about 47 terabytes of data a day, and then run about 50 playbooks against that data, looking for anomalies within the data. And it's just, that's something that we do every day, 365, and we have about 100 forensics data scientists within the security organization looking at that, leveraging Talos, which is a really critical component of our security environment.
Great. Thank you for that. And Jake?
Yeah, Tom. So I got guys who are like a lot smarter on this topic than I am, but I'll just say in general, right? So we are leveraging policy that's in VDI 8530-1 and the enterprise scoring model, which puts a construct out there that like who's doing what, right? So there's a little bit of layered defense, right? Kind of external service providers, and then internally some responsibility that you have to yourself to actually, use data analytics and SIM and those things there.
Great, thank you. And Stephen? I think you're on mute, Stephen, or
I was on mute. Great
okay.
catch.
You're
I
good.
think one of the areas that was brought up there that really resonated with me is this idea of data dominance, and that's something we use around my organization. Where if there's data that leads to risk, I want it. I want it accurate, thorough, timely, and preferably in one place, so I can run very fast analytics and hopefully some predictive analytics in that space as well. And for us, what that's meant is we've built out a data lake. And that data lake has to be agile enough and nimble enough to grow with the ebbs and flows of data, but also to interface with all of our services, whether they're on-prem, in the cloud, third-party infrastructure. And that's been a real challenge for us, but also an amazing place and source of victories in that we have visibility across our enterprise now that we've never had before.
Great, great. And I'll just ask another question, Stephen, and since I'll just direct it to you. You've been in this game for a while, and we've gone from a lot of data centers. I think the definition of data center was you had a computer under your desk, to where we are now going to cloud. How are we compared to maybe 10 years ago? Because people still say cloud, and the biggest vulnerability is security. That's why they don't do it, because I think that's changing, but it's still there. How do you think we compare back to the good old days?
Yeah, so I would say as a federal government, incredible advancement. And in our organization, for example, we report 0 government data centers. We don't have any. And for us, that means we're completely in the cloud, and in some places we're in colo space and some data centers. And I will argue that you can have as good, if not better, security in these cloud environments. Yeah. But what you have to be willing to do is reposition thinking, because you're not going to lift and shift what you had traditionally and drop it in the cloud environment. That doesn't work, and it's horribly expensive to do that. You have to think about the workload and then how to optimize it in that new cloud environment. And you start thinking about what I consider the cloud primitives. These are things that are in the fabric of the cloud, tools and capabilities you can use for security. You start talking about capabilities and outcomes in the cloud, and you're going to find that the cloud providers can frankly do it better, faster, and in many ways cheaper than what you were able to do on-prem.
Great. How about you, Jake?
Yeah, no, so I agree with Stephen. I'm probably going to break with him a little bit in that we do sometimes do our lift and shift, and I know like people get strong, but and I would agree that it's not the right way in some cases. It's just an effect of being able to do it faster and have a more resilient system. And I would agree with Stephen as well in that. Now I will say people who used to be resistant are definitely now embracing it, right? And in fact, I think the security is getting better because with the idea that you can't put your hand on something, right? Even if it was just a virtualized stack of blades, there's just this feeling of just wanting to understand, like from an application or from an IP range, right? We need to understand what's going from this place to this place here. So I will say, like in my space, we are adopting cloud. We are gaining the benefits of cloud, and in some cases, even with those lift and shifts, right, being able to squeeze 20 to 25% more capacity, concurrency. And that's with a little bit of transformation. So I look forward to when we can actually start using, in some cases, maybe the legacy applications then become cloud native. And then that's when we get the big returns.
Yeah, I think it's always a business case. And boy, if anybody wants to go on a good tour, our partners over at Equinix, it really gives you the idea of what the art of the possible is. It is just blow away. You think you're here we go with Star Trek, but you're in the Star Trek Enterprise in the engineering room. It's unbelievable. And if you have a government data center in a basement that leaks, lift and shift might make a lot of sense. Roy, you want to add a little to this?
Yeah, so like both of them said about moving the traditional data center application into the cloud. We went through the same concept. We had a lot of application all over the place, not only SBA in my other areas, HHS. So what we usually look at, we always look at the code itself. We don't look at the what server it's running. We don't look at any of those. We looked at the application layer and see there are new technologies available like Jenkins or any other code deployment tools. We utilize them to migrate into the serverless architecture to the cloud, which reduce the cost, but it will give a lot of leverage to run the applications. It's vendor agnostic, OS agnostic. So it was a huge win for places I worked when we go to the cloud instead of getting rid of our data centers. So that's something we worked every place I was part of, is reducing the data center and cloud first mandate.
Yeah, and Roy, I will attest to that. I've actually seen it firsthand. Sanjay, your CTO was giving tours to government folks,
Yeah,
and it was really pretty crazy. Like it showed that you were working and improving your security scores, and how you had, gradually, gotten better and better and better and better. It was a very effective tour, and you guys used to do that. I guess we'll wait till after Paycheck Protection Program, and and where COVID's behind us. Sydney, really interested to hear how you all have evolved over the years. You're kind of on the edge a little bit with all the, since you're creating a lot of these products that people are using. What have you seen over the last 10 years?
Yeah, when we started building out our first internal private cloud, I think clouds were still white puffy things in the sky, and now it's a common term that everybody uses. We started and built a private cloud in my data centers. Well, there's more than we have 19 today. There's more than that when we started. And then we realized that wasn't enough, and where the world was going, and most of our consumption was SaaS consumption, software as a service. Kind of the end product versus building infrastructure and building on top of it. Although we can do both. So with that need, we built out in our carrier neutral facilities. Equinix is a big partner with us on that. We call it cloud port. So it's an architecture we put in there, and that gives me secure connectivity to all of my different providers through a central location that I can audit and monitor and put back into my AI system for security. And then going back to the data and how secure it is, we built a program called Casper, which is a service provider readiness, where we go in and look at the data classification that the data we want to put into the classification, and is that service provider ready to hold that classified type of data. If it isn't, we'll partner with them and build up to what we need. And then we have on top of that, an overlay called Security Buddy. So anytime you deploy into a public service provider environment, you automatically get a Security Buddy that goes in and is constantly assessing what's there, and if you're meeting the standards. So you get a score every day of 0 to 100, and you have to maintain a certain score depending on the data classification that you've put into that service provider. So that's how we keep our environment safe.
Wow. Yeah, we're gonna have to get you back, Sydney. That's good stuff. I know we've been working with you on the Trusted Internet Connection pilot, which we don't have time to get into everything today. In closing, I would love to hear about, hey, this is the beginning of the year. What are we going to see? What do you think some of the trends we're going to see in 2021? And maybe I'll start off with you, Jake. Where do you see? Is it going to be continuation? Is there some new things on the horizon? Where do you see us as we get beyond COVID and get into normal operations?
Yeah, so I think I'll say from a COVID perspective, this is definitely not just an event, right? This is going to be a shift. In the department, right? It's about the lethality, and this type of event will definitely kind of challenge us to be able to do our job, right? So next time we're going to be more ready when it comes. So you're going to see more investment, I believe, in things like being able to work effectively from home for certain groups that can do that. And then also for those who can't, right? What are good mitigations against something, like a global pandemic? 10 years ago, when I was a young reserve officer, I was actually in a unit, consequence management, and I was the IT guy in that organization. And so for the most part, I was a support, right, to the mission. And it's interesting to come full circle right here 10 years later, and I think we all are now managing consequence management, right? In fact, I would say that became half of my job. So again, going to the future, along with leveraging the cloud, right? We talked about the benefits, right? In some cases, less expensive, faster, more resilience, right? Let's get in there quickly. Let's get that capacity there. Let's look at these networks. Home networks and commercial networks are an extension. It was definitely like that in mobility, right? But now even more so, it's an extension of the effectiveness of our organization there. So thanks, Tom.
Great. Thank you. And Stephen?
I would say, IT's always been the heroes in many cases, but I think in this situation, the value and the strategic value of IT is becoming increasingly important in all organizations. Even in organizations where IT was a front-running strategic driver, now it's even more so. In organizations where IT was a commodity, probably as common as electricity or plumbing, now it's IT forward because of the frankly, the force multiplier IT's become in productivity during this situation. So we're never going back to where we were, that's for certain, in terms of how we work. But I think the new way we work is going to be incredible. I think that taking the silver lining out of this situation is we've been able to find great new ways to advance and leverage technology that's going to help move us into the future. I think that's a wonderful situation to be in.
Great. And Roy?
Well, for next, like I said, this situation is going to stay here, and we are going to modernize our existing architecture and move forward and more flexible to adapt new technologies. And we will see more data coming into the networks from this year onwards because the endpoints expanded all the way up to the watches now. You can do Zoom calls to your wearables. So that means there's more data coming in, there's more data classification need to be done, and also there's going to be a heavy influence. We're going to think how we are going to handle our privacy information. For the next year, it's going to be a huge topic because the humongous amount of data is going to come through and which way it's coming in. So it's good to be in cybersecurity and see more data.
Great. And Sydney, you get the last word. And I know you're a public company. Can't tell us all the secrets, but anything you can you can give us.
So we did a lot of soul searching and determined that really all COVID did was just accelerated all trends that were probably going to happen anywhere. It accelerated that cloud, it accelerated the work anywhere securely. So this is just going to continue. We're not going to go back in any numbers to the workforce in the United States until the end of June. But we also are looking at every office location that we have and shutting down a lot of offices because, quite frankly, people are more productive on the road or at home and then spending time with customers when they can go out and be with customers. So I think all it did was accelerate what was going to happen over quite a few years into 9 months, and you're going to have a hybrid environment with fewer office, more collaboration, more virtual collaboration, and and higher productivity at the end of the day. And security is making this all possible. That's why security is so important. It must be a day zero design into any architecture that you're going to deploy in the future.
Thank you. I think you're right, Sydney. And you get the last word of the day. Thank you, Jake, Stephen, Roy, and Sydney. Been a great discussion. I can't believe this hour is gone already. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. We'd like to thank Cisco, and please tune in next week for our cybersecurity summit. And we got Roy coming back, but it should be a fantastic couple hours on January 12th. So everybody have a good week and have a good year. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. Bye-bye.
Bye.